Hey everyone, welcome back to the Web Healing Show. There's going to be a small little talk on inner rebellion, followed by the remedial solutions through radical statements. And I want you to go back to the older days, younger days, and if you're already young and watching, observe yourself how you manage the discipline, the authority, the demands, the power, and compulsion to do things which you may not want to do. And all of us have gone through those moments, right from childhood to teenage, and even as an adult. You've kind of complied perhaps to your parents and later to your peers and then your partners and later probably to children. And it goes on. Not always all compliance is very, very pleasant, or not always you comply fully. And there are ways of saying no to that. And one of them is outright rebellion and say, hey, I don't care. I won't do it. And I'll do as and when I want to do it, not because you want me to do it, as and when you want me to do it. And that's how, if given a chance, you would love to rebel. Some people are very cooperative and they say yes, but when they cooperate with others, they're not cooperating with themselves. So they feel so miserable saying yes to others because from inside they feel, no, I don't want to do this. And there are some people who neither say no and nor they say outrightly yes. They do things in a way that nobody will give them any work again. They're expert at messing up the work that authority has given them. And we call them more of a passive aggressive behavior. We've done all that, We've sometimes complied, we've sometimes rebelled, we've sometimes sabotaged the authorities. And there are fantastic and very intelligent and interesting ways of doing it consciously. And several times it goes very, very at subconscious level. And we've done that often. Ask those people who've spoiled their marriages because they were forced to get married to somebody they didn't want to get married. Ask those people who have messed up their career because they had to go for the career they didn't want, but their parents wanted. Ask those people who took up a job against their wish and they've messed it up all. What happens when we try and sabotage or rebel in a sabotage manner? We create sometimes a no-win situation. Neither you win nor your parents win, or not the authority that wins ever. And while sabotaging them, we're sabotaging ourselves also. A lot of drug addicts, alcoholics fall in that category. They want to show it to somebody that, look, the decision you took was atrocious. See what has happened to me. Whether that somebody notices ever or not, we don't know. However, the sabotage will act against their interests forever. You need to recognize your pattern. How do you deal with authorities, with compulsions, with commands, with demands, with rules, and with controls? And that would say a lot about who you are and the kind of person you are. Are you meek and that's why compliant? Are you aggressive and that's why a rebel? Are you more of a no win situation and that's why being aggressive in a very passive way with no win situation? Or do you see the larger plan and larger design and cooperate come what may and create a win win situation where you're also happy, others are also happy? When you address your emotional charge, you will invariably find a way to make things work from no win situation to a win win situation. And that win win situation is there for all of us. Till the time we live, there's somebody or the other who will be your authority. In the childhood, maybe, as I said, parents are your authority, teachers are your authority, and later others are your authority. You pick up a job, your boss is an authority, and you don't want to do a job, all your clients and customers are your authorities. For for an actor, their viewers are authorities. So we always have some other authorities who are ruling our lives. When there are no others who can really control you, eventually you feel controlled by the universe, controlled by God, and we spend better part of our lives trying to sabotage so-called universal plan or God's plan or higher self's plan and create a hopeless situation in your life. You need to examine that. You need to check that. Do you want to continue doing that? Do you want to address that? And if yes, let's begin somewhere. I'm not saying that this tendency will go away in a second or a minute. However, the intent that you create in this very moment can go a long way in your life. Later, nobody becomes authority for you. It's your authority over yourself. So when there are nobody or there is no one who will tell you what to do, what not to do, you naturally divide yourself into two parts. One, your authoritarian self, and another, sabotaging self. Now, they keep playing games. For example, the authority figure in you would say, hey, you must wake up early in the morning. And you get up, the alarm goes, and your eyes are wide awake. But the child in you will say, hey, listen, tomorrow I'll wake up early. Tonight or today, just let me doze off a little extra. I want to just snooze. I want to just laze around. I can postpone what I'm doing today and I'll do it tomorrow. In any case, leave it. And then you go to sleep. You decide you want to go for exercise. And there is a rebel in you who would say, well, not from today, maybe some other day. You decide you're not going to have chocolate cakes anymore. And there is a part of you who would say, one more piece, please. And then you gobble down a few pieces and then feel guilty about that. So the more you try and be strict with yourself, the more you sabotage your own self. And that continues. Ask so many Weight Watchers, they do that game with themselves. So many students, they do it with themselves. And so many projects can get ruined just because of that. Was there, when you have this inner fight with your authority self and your child self, nobody wins. It's certainly not you. It's for sure a sabotage technique for yourself. Do you want to continue that? Or do you want a solution out of that? The awareness is very, very important here. The day you realize that you're sabotaging no one, you will start cooperating with yourself. The day you realize you're rebelling against no one, you will start cooperating with yourself. You're not required to cooperate with anyone. Even when you seemingly cooperate with yourself, you're actually cooperating with others. And when you're seemingly cooperating with others, you're actually cooperating with yourself. Think about that. Because giving cooperation is in your highest and the best interest. Because what goes around comes around. When you cooperate with others, you open up to the possibilities of inviting cooperation for yourself. So when you cooperate with others, don't think that you're doing it out of fear, doing it out of smallness, doing it out of your weakness. Know that you're not cooperating with anyone. You're just cooperating with yourself. And that will make you feel good about yourself. And when you feel good about yourself, you will be able to easily do that. The fight between your authority self and the child self will cease and the cooperation will start happening. Remain open to the possibilities and give a strong intent right now. Let this day be the day of transformation. Close your eyes and recite after me. I'm going to go slow and take it very easy. Gently recite all the statements and watch the effect on yourself. And if you want to really pursue with it, keep listening to this recitation or do it on your own, at least for 21 days. Great. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. Breathe in cooperation through your nose and breathe out rebel through your mouth. Breathe in cooperation and breathe out non cooperation. Breathe in a lot of cooperation and breathe out your inner rebel. Breathe in a lot of cooperation through your nose and breathe out your aggression. Breathe in a lot of cooperation and breathe out forceful compliance. Once again, breathe in cooperation and breathe out fearful and insecure compliance. Switch over to normal breathing now. And recite after me. I revive my non cooperation. I recognize my non cooperation. I realign my non cooperation. I reorient my non cooperation. I reposition my non cooperation. I revive my non cooperation. I recognize my non cooperation. I realign my non cooperation. I reorient my non cooperation. I reposition my non cooperation. I revive my non compliance. I recognize my non compliance. I realign my non compliance. I reorient my non compliance. I reposition my non compliance. I revive my defiance. I recognize my defiance. I realign my defiance. I reorient my defiance. I reposition my defiance. I revive my fearful cooperation. I recognize my fearful cooperation. I realign my fearful cooperation. I reorient my fearful cooperation. I reposition my fearful cooperation. I revive my aggression. I recognize my aggression. I realign my aggression. I reorient my aggression. I reposition my aggression. I revive my passive aggression. I recognize my passive aggression. I realign my passive aggression. I reorient my passive aggression. I reposition my passive aggression. I revive my fear of being controlled. I recognize my fear of being controlled. I realign my fear of being controlled. I reorient my fear of being controlled. I reposition my fear of being controlled. I revive my desire to break rules and boundaries. I recognize my desire to break rules and boundaries. I realign my desire to break rules and boundaries. I reorient my desire to break rules and boundaries. I reorient my desire to break rules and boundaries. I reposition my desire to break rules and boundaries. I revive my inner resistance to cooperate. I recognize my inner resistance to cooperate. I realign my inner resistance to cooperate. I reorient my inner resistance to cooperate. I reposition my inner resistance to cooperate. I revive my reluctance to cooperate. I recognize my reluctance to cooperate. I realign my reluctance to cooperate. I reorient my reluctance to cooperate. I reposition my reluctance to cooperate. I revive my need for cooperation. I recognize my need for cooperation. I realign my need for cooperation. I reorient my need for cooperation. I reposition my need for cooperation. I revive my need for cooperation with the authorities. I recognize my need for cooperation with the authorities. I realign my need for cooperation with the authorities. I reorient my need for cooperation with the authorities. I reposition my need for cooperation with the authorities. I revive my need for cooperation with the universe. I recognize my need for cooperation with the universe. I realign my need for cooperation with the universe. I reorient my need for cooperation with the universe. I reposition my need for cooperation with the universe. I revive my need for cooperation with myself. I recognize my need for cooperation with myself. I realign my need for cooperation with myself. I reorient my need for cooperation with myself. I reposition my need for cooperation with myself. I revive the cooperation. I recognize the cooperation. I realign the cooperation. I reorient the cooperation. I reposition the cooperation. I revive the win-win situation. I recognize the win-win situation. I realign the win-win situation. I reorient the win-win situation. I reposition the win-win situation. Thank you for listening. This is Arpan Parmar. Stay tuned and keep listening, keep reciting. See you tomorrow at 6 p.m. India time. Thank you.